Picture a sleek laptop, just sitting on a mahogany desk.
Okay, I'm picturing it.
The screen is entirely dark, except for this massive, glowing red padlock dead in the center.
Oh, wow. That is a heavy visual.
Right, and behind that laptop, sort of softly out of focus, is the American flag in the United States Capitol building, lit up against the night sky.
Yeah, that definitely sets a very specific mood.
It really does. Welcome to the It Factor. We're Jemmy and Nye exploring a new blog post by Mr. Len Kaplan, CEO of CDML, a managed service provider in Queens, NY, offering network management, voice over IP, unified communications as a service, cybersecurity compliance, infrastructure as a service, cloud solutions, and Microsoft 365 and Azure solutions. If you're a small business owner or manage IT for a growing organization, this episode is for you.
It is a really phenomenal topic for a deep dive today.
I think so, too.
Because that image you just painted, the red padlock against the backdrop of the Capitol, it perfectly captures the reality we are stepping into right now.
Yeah, and the title of Len Kaplan's article really hits the nail on the head. It's called, "The Government is Taking Cyber Threats Seriously. Are You?"
Which is a great question.
Yeah.
The underlying premise here is that, cybersecurity is no longer just this backroom IT headache.
But it's not just the IT guy in the basement resetting your passwords anymore.
Exactly. It has become front-page national security.
So our mission for this deep dive is to unpack exactly how the U.S. government's drastic shift in treating cyber risk actually impacts the everyday reality of, well, you. Small businesses, municipalities, local organizations.
Because it is very easy to look at the Capitol building and think, that is Washington's problem.
Oh, totally. Like, I run a local business or I manage a school district. What does federal cyber policy have to do with me, right?
Right, and that is a very dangerous trap to fall into. The source material makes it incredibly clear that the ripples from this macro shift are hitting local shores right now.
So what exactly is this macro shift? What is the government doing?
Well, the U.S. government recently launched the State Department Bureau of Emerging Threats.
Wait, the State Department?
Yeah, the State Department.
Let me stop you there, because historically, wouldn't a cybercrime be handled by law enforcement? Like, you get hacked, you call the FBI, they investigate.
Right.
Why is this suddenly a diplomatic and intelligence issue?
That is exactly the shift we need to understand. For a long time, cyber incidents were treated almost like digital vandalism or localized white-collar crime.
Yeah, exactly. You'd call the authorities after the fact, file a report, and just try to clean up the mess.
But by creating this specific bureau within the State Department, the government is elevating cyber risk to the exact same level as geopolitical and military threats.
Oh, wow. So they are putting it on par with physical warfare.
They really are. Their mandate is heavily focused on cyber attacks, the weaponization of artificial intelligence, and threats to critical infrastructure.
Are they basically forming like an arson task force?
What do you mean?
Like, instead of waiting for a building to burn down and sending the fire department, they are sending heavily armed units to actively hunt down the arsonists before they even strike the match.
That is part of it, definitely.
Yeah.
But let's take that analogy a step further.
Okay.
It is not just about catching the arsonists. It is about recognizing that the building materials we have used to construct our entire society are highly flammable.
Oh, I see.
The strategy is shifting from just reacting to incidents to actively anticipating and disrupting them. They are looking at foreign adversaries who are using AI to automate the discovery of vulnerabilities.
Because the government realizes that critical infrastructure, everything from water treatment plants to financial networks to the local power grid, it just cannot sustain continuous reactive damage.
Exactly. The disruption to everyday life is simply too high at this point.
So how does this systemic view trickle down to the listener? Because for the IT manager or the small business owner listening right now, if the government is out there hunting cyber arsonists on a global scale, how does that change their operational reality on a random Tuesday morning?
That is the million-dollar question.
And real quick, by the way, if you want to make sure you are always staying ahead of these macro shifts, a quick reminder that new blog posts from CDML are published every Tuesday and Thursday.
It is a fantastic resource to keep your finger on the pulse, for sure.
Highly recommend it. But back to that trickle-down effect. How does it change a small business's reality?
It changes their reality because the government is now looking at the entire interconnected system.
Mm-hmm.
And if the government is looking at the whole system, organizations can no longer just look at the four walls of their own business.
Right.
You have to look at your entire ecosystem, Which brings us to one of the most sobering points Len Kaplan makes in the article.
You're talking about ecosystem risk and the supply chain domino effect, right?
Exactly.
Yeah, the example he highlights involving Infinite Campus genuinely made my stomach drop.
It should. It really should. For context, Infinite Campus is a widely used student information system.
Right.
Countless school districts rely on it to manage everything from grades and attendance to highly sensitive student, family, and medical data.
And the article notes that a known threat group claimed to have stolen sensitive data from this platform,
Yep.
which raises this terrifying prospect of multiple school districts being impacted simultaneously.
I'll want that.
And not because the schools themselves had bad security, but because the platform they all shared was targeted.
This is the mechanical reality of ecosystem risk. Let's look at how this actually works under the hood because it's fascinating.
Well, okay, lay it out for us.
Historically, a small business or a local municipality focused on perimeter defense. You built a strong firewall, you secured your servers, and you felt pretty safe.
Right, the castle and moat strategy.
Exactly.
Yeah.
But today, nobody operates in a vacuum.
Mm.
You use third-party payroll software, you use cloud storage vendors, you use platforms like Infinite Campus. And to make those services work, you don't just hand them your data. You often grant them persistent, authenticated connections right into your local network.
Through API keys and stuff like that.
Right.
So it's basically like my school district giving a master key to the HVAC repair company so they can come in and fix the vents whenever they need to.
That is a perfect way to look at it.
Yeah.
And if the HVAC company gets robbed, well, the thief now has the master key to your entire school.
Oh, man.
The attackers aren't hacking the school directly. They are stealing the master key from the vendor.
So an organization might have completely impenetrable internal security, but if they rely on a trusted third-party vendor and that vendor gets compromised, the organization's data is exposed anyway.
Exactly. Attackers have realized that instead of trying to hack 50 different school districts one by one,
Which takes a lot of time.
right, they can just hack the one vendor that all 50 districts use.
Okay, I have to play the role of the frustrated small business owner here because this is infuriating.
I get it. It
Yeah.
really is.
I do my job, right? I buy the heavy-duty locks, I pay for the security software, I train my staff. But my vendor's vendor gets hacked and I pay the price.
Yeah.
How on earth are organizations supposed to cope with liabilities they don't directly own or even control?
It is incredibly frustrating. But, in the digital age, you own the liability of who you trust.
Wow.
Yeah.
You own the liability of who you trust.
Yeah. Attackers are mapping out these supply chains economically. They are specifically looking for the weakest link in your trusted circle.
So coping with it requires a fundamental shift in how we view third-party relationships.
Exactly. You can no longer just sign a contract with a software vendor and assume they are secure. You have to verify it because their risk is now mathematically your risk.
Okay, so that establishes how the attackers are getting in. They are exploiting the ecosystem and the interconnectedness of our vendors.
Right.
But who exactly are they targeting right now and why? The source material focuses heavily on the public sector.
It does, and it really comes down to leverage. Yeah. Municipalities and educational institutions sit at a highly dangerous intersection right now.
How so?
Well, on one hand, they manage incredibly sensitive data. But more importantly, they provide essential public services that society relies on every single day.
Right, and they're usually doing it with, 15-year-old servers and incredibly tight budgets
Which is the absolute perfect storm for an attacker.
because they can't defend themselves well.
That, and if we look at the economics of a cyber attack, the threat actor wants to apply pressure where it hurts the most so they can extort a payout.
Oh, I see.
A public sector target simply cannot afford downtime. A city manager cannot say, well, the network is locked up, I guess 911 dispatch, and the water treatment facility will just be offline until next month.
Yeah, that's not an option. They have to get back online immediately.
Exactly. And that desperation creates immense leverage for the attacker to demand a ransom.
But the article points out something even more insidious. It's not always just about extorting the municipality itself, is it?
No, it's not.
Sometimes attacking a local school or a town government is just a stepping stone.
Yes, and this connects right back to ecosystem risk.
Mm-hmm.
Often, smaller local governments or agencies have trusted digital connections to larger state or federal networks.
Oh, okay.
So an attacker might infiltrate a small town's lightly defended network, not because they care about the town's local data.
But because they can use that trusted connection to pivot.
Exactly. They pivot and infiltrate a much larger, more lucrative government network.
Which means if you are a private business, say a local IT vendor or a software developer that sells services to these municipalities or schools, you inherit this massive target on your back too.
You absolutely do.
That is wild.
And because of all this interconnected risk, the government and the public sector are heavily adopting strict compliance expectations.
Like the NIST frameworks.
Right, NIST frameworks, which are essentially the gold standard federal guidelines for cybersecurity.
Yeah.
And here is the kicker. They don't just apply those rules to themselves.
They force them downstream.
Exactly.
Meaning what exactly? If I'm a private vendor, what happens to me?
It means if you want to win a contract with a local government, or even just retain the business you already have, your ability to do so will depend entirely on proving that your systems meet those same strict NIST compliance standards.
So security is no longer just an IT cost.
No, it is a barrier to revenue. If you cannot prove you are secure, you are literally locked out of the market.
Okay, before we move on to how we actually defend against this, because it sounds pretty overwhelming, I know you wanted to jump in with a quick request.
Oh yeah, I do. If you are finding this breakdown of ecosystem risk and supply chain targeting helpful, please take a quick second to click the thumbs up button.
Yeah, please do.
It really helps us know what topics are resonating with you, the listener, so we can dive deeper into them in the future.
All right, so the threat landscape sounds honestly terrifying.
It can be, yeah.
We've got government-level task forces, supply chain domino effects, attackers leveraging essential 911 services, and downstream compliance, forcing private businesses to level up or lose revenue.
It is a lot to take in.
It sounds like you need $1 billion budget and a team of ex-spies to defend yourself.
Right, but you don't.
But the solutions Len Kaplan outlines are surprisingly grounded. So if the public sector is being targeted through these massive vendor ecosystems, what is the actual defense?
Well,
Because you can't just disconnect from your vendors.
no, you can't. You have to do business. And this is actually the most encouraging part of the deep dive.
Oh, good. We need some good news.
The shift from reactive to proactive security does not mean you have to buy the most cutting-edge, experimental, expensive software on the market.
Really?
No. It requires consistency and discipline with the fundamentals.
Just the basics.
Just the basics. The vast majority of breaches happen not because an attacker used some genius zero-day exploit.
Meaning a vulnerability so new the software creator has had 0 days to fix it.
Exactly. Those are rare. Breaches actually happen because an organization neglected a basic fundamental.
Okay, the source material lays out 5 fundamental practices, but reading through them, they sound deceptively simple.
They do, on paper.
Take patching, for example. The article says, keep systems patched and eliminate unsupported software.
Right.
I mean, everyone knows they need to patch. Why is it still a primary vector for attacks?
Because of the operational friction involved?
What do you mean by that?
It's very easy to say, just patch your systems.
Yeah.
But when you are a municipality running a legacy system that controls the local water supply, taking that system offline to install an update is a massive operational hurdle.
So sure, it requires scheduled downtime.
Right. And there is always the fear that the patch might break the ancient software you rely on. So IT managers put it off.
They just hit remind me tomorrow over and over.
Exactly. And when a software company releases a patch, they're basically announcing to the world, hey, we found a vulnerability.
Oh, right. So if you delay applying that patch, you are leaving an open window that attackers already have a map to.
That is exactly it.
Okay, what about multi-factor authentication? The article lists enforcing MFA across all critical systems. Again, sounds so easy on paper.
It does. But enforcing it across an entire organization creates cultural pushback.
Because people hate it.
They do. Staff get annoyed by having to verify their login on their phone every single morning.
Or you have shadow IT.
Right.
Departments using software the IT team doesn't even know about, which means it isn't protected by MFA.
Exactly. But it is non-negotiable at this point. Attackers will steal passwords. That is a statistical guarantee.
Right.
MFA ensures that even if they have your password, they cannot get in without that second form of verification. It stops a massive percentage of automated credential stuffing attacks dead in their tracks.
Okay, then there's the third point. Evaluating vendor access and third-party risk regularly. We touched on this with the HRC master key analogy.
Yeah, it did.
But how do you actually do this when a modern business uses dozens, if not hundreds, of different software as a service apps?
It is incredibly difficult, which is why it requires a structured process. You cannot give vendors more access than they absolutely need.
Right.
And you have to regularly audit who actually has the keys to your digital house.
Right.
If a vendor doesn't need to be in your network anymore, revoking their access immediately has to be an automated part of your offboarding process.
Makes sense. The fourth point focuses on the human element, training staff to recognize phishing and social engineering. Because humans are often the weakest link, right?
Always. Attackers know that tricking a stressed-out employee into handing over a password via a fake urgent email is vastly cheaper and easier than trying to hack a firewall.
But the training has to move beyond boring annual compliance videos, doesn't it?
It has to. It needs to be consistent and engaging. You're trying to build a culture where your employees become an active, skeptical line of defense.
And finally, the fifth fundamental. Maintain and test incident response and recovery plans. I really want to highlight the word test there.
Yes, that is the most important word. Having a response plan in a 3-ring binder gathering dust on a shelf does you absolutely no good during a live ransomware attack.
Right, you're panicking, you're not reading a manual.
Exactly. You have to run drills. You have to know exactly who to call, what servers to isolate, and how to actually restore from your backups before the crisis hits.
You know, looking at these 5 fundamentals, it reminds me so much of physical home security.
How so?
It's like an organization will spend thousands of dollars on a fancy laser security system for their network perimeter, but they forget to simply verify who still has the spare key to the back door.
Right.
Or they leave the basement window unlocked. These 5 steps are basically the digital deadbolts.
That is exactly what they are. Do not invest in the laser grid until you have verified that every deadbolt is locked.
But, knowing the fundamentals is one thing. Consistently executing them, day in and day out, dealing with the operational friction of patching and user complaints about MFA, all while trying to actually run a business or a school district.
It's a lot.
That is a completely different story. It sounds exhausting.
Which is exactly why organizations turn to partners like CDML Computer Services.
Right, because you can't do it all alone.
The reality for most complex, under-resourced organizations is that they simply do not have the internal bandwidth to monitor all of this constantly.
Yeah, they just don't have the hours in the day.
CDML's role is to step into that operational chaos and bring structure, visibility, and predictability to their IT environments.
And Len Kaplan outlines a really powerful philosophy in this section of the article, and I think it's the core thesis of this whole deep dive.
I agree.
He writes that the goal is not to eliminate risk entirely because that is impossible.
Right.
Wait, are we essentially admitting defeat here?
Not defeat. We are admitting reality, and this is a profound shift in thinking.
Okay, walk me through it.
For years, the security industry sold the illusion of perfect protection. Buy our firewall, install our antivirus, and you will never be hacked.
Right, the silver bullet pitch.
But if the government is treating cyber as a systemic national security threat, we have to admit that perfect protection is a myth. The goal is to manage risk intelligently.
So what does intelligent risk management look like in practice? Because for the IT manager listening right now who is exhausted by trying to build an impenetrable fortress on a shoestring budget, hearing that perfect security is a myth might actually be a relief.
It really should be a relief. Intelligent risk management means designing your environment so that when an incident inevitably happens—
When, not if.
Exactly. When a vendor is compromised or an employee clicks a bad link, it is a controlled event, not an extinction-level crisis.
So limiting the blast radius.
Yes. It means your network is segmented, so if the marketing department gets ransomware, it doesn't immediately spread to the financial databases.
Right.
It means your backups are secure and isolated, so you can restore operations quickly without paying a ransom. It means your tested incident response plan activates smoothly, and everyone knows their role.
It's a massive mindset shift. It requires moving away from the fantasy of, we will never be hacked, and embracing the much more empowered reality of we are fully prepared to contain the blast radius when we are targeted.
Exactly. It takes the fear out of the equation and replaces it with operational readiness.
Because fear is paralyzing.
It is. Readiness is operational. The launch of the Bureau of Emerging Threats proves that the stakes are higher than ever. It's about protecting essential services, protecting communities, and protecting trust.
And you can't do that if you are paralyzed by the complexity of the ecosystem.
No, you can't. You need a practical, structured approach to managing your liabilities.
Which brings us to a final thought I want to leave you with, something to really mull over after you finish listening today.
I love this question.
Think about your most trusted third-party vendor right now. The software or service your organization relies on the absolute most to function.
Everyone has one.
If that vendor suffered a catastrophic breach tonight at 2 a.m., and attackers gain access to your environment through their API keys.
Which happens all the time.
Would your morning tomorrow be a minor controlled event where you execute your response plan, or would it be a total crisis?
That is the ultimate test of ecosystem resilience. Because in this interconnected landscape, you are truly only as secure as the weakest link in your entire ecosystem.
It is time to find out exactly where your organization stands. A proactive assessment today prevents a major disruption tomorrow. We highly encourage you to visit cdml.com to contact CDML for help evaluating your current security posture, identifying your ecosystem gaps, and building a practical plan to strengthen your defenses.
And while you are there, make sure you subscribe to the blog and check out their blogcasts on YouTube.
Absolutely. Remember their motto, CDML Computer Services, empowering business growth through innovation using secure, sustainable solutions. We're Jemmy and Mai. Thanks for listening. Till next time.